So how strong is your intuition? If somebody were to ask you if your intuition was strong, would you be able to answer that? Would you say yes? Most of us wouldn't, right? We all say that we're not that special, right? We all say that we don't have that special gift. That's for intuitives or psychics or people who see the other side. But today I have a fabulous guest on by the name of Lynn Robinson, who is actually an expert at intuition and teaches people how to hone in these amazing skills on fine-tuning your own intuition. So if you've ever said to yourself, man, I wish that I could see things, hear things, feel things, know things, she's the person that can teach you how. She has all of these amazing gifts and all of these amazing tools that can help you better understand your own intuition and how to read it. We get signs all the time. We get little inklings. We have that thing called trust your gut. And a lot of times we either don't pay attention or we don't trust it. I know I do that myself. I'll get a little ping. Something will pop up. I'll see something, hear something, feel something, know something, and I don't trust it or I don't listen. And the problem is that we are so chaotic and there's so much chaos going around us that happens quite a bit. Today, I sit down with the amazing and talented Lynn Robinson, a very well-known, well-rounded intuitive from Boston, who's going to share with us today her tips and tricks on how she became an intuitive, how she learned to trust her intuition, and how you can do the same. Are you ready? Let's do it.
Hi, Amanda.
How are you?
Yay, good.
How's the weather?
You know, it ended up being absolutely nothing. The weathermen were totally wrong on this one. Oh my gosh.
Oh.
But I'm not complaining about that. I'm just going to turn off my email so it doesn't keep binging on us here or there. Okay, good. I think I'm all set.
Well, thank you for saying yes to doing that.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I have to laugh because you can't see around me, but I'm actually in the middle of packing up my house to move. So I've got this little oasis of sanity here, and the rest of I'm not going to turn the video around, but it's pretty crazy around me at the moment.
Are you moving within Boston?
No, we're going to move to Portland, Maine.
Wow,
Yeah,
what
big
a
move.
change.
Yeah, we actually live on Cape Cod now, but my son and his family are up in Portland, Maine. So he thought that would be fun to join them up there as the grandchildren get into the picture. I can't believe I'm actually saying the word grandchildren.
How lovely, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, and what a pretty area, too.
Yeah, it is. I'm actually looking forward to it, other than the winter is a little longer than it is here. So we'll have to go trips down south to Tennessee or something. I have some friends that live in Chattanooga. So yeah, absolutely.
Or Florida, where it's really warm.
Yeah, where it's really warm. How does it get really cold where you are, or about 50?
Not really. I mean, I would say yes, but
Yeah.
compared to what you're used to now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
We get, I would say on average, we're in the 20s to 30s, like January, February.
Oh, wow. Okay, colder than I thought.
December, though, I mean, it's a crapshoot. Sometimes it could be 65 in December.
Wow.
January is usually our coldest month. Like this year, we were getting down to 9, which is unusual. We don't usually get that cold.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
Yeah, that was unusual for us. And we will typically be maybe 20s, 15 degrees, 20s. But we're already back up into the 40s and 50s. So
I'm so jealous.
Yeah,
that sounds nice. Yeah,
I went to Kripalu January 1st through the 5th, and you guys had gotten slammed with a really big storm.
Yeah.
And I think
what did you take?
Well, I took. Are you talking about the course that I took?
Yeah.
Yeah, I took it was a New Year, New You course, and it was all about intuition, witchcraft.
Wow.
Yeah,
Was it all
numerology.
the various presenters at Kripalu, or was some one presenter in particular?
It was a group.
Yeah.
There was a tarot expert, an astrologer, a numerologist, Sade Simone, who is a meditation expert. And so it was just,
Yeah.
there was a group of about 6 people that there were 6 presenters.
Yeah.
There was
Wow.
also Alex Roxy, I think is her last name. I'm blanking out, but she's like a kind of like an empowering coach for women, really empowering on just being who you are, embracing your sexuality. And like her whole
Wow.
life, she was raised being told that she was too much. You're too much, just too much.
Oh, wow.
And so, and she talked about the book Running with Wolves, and
Oh,
how
yes.
women are constantly being told, like, behave a certain way and only do this and don't do that and don't speak up, and, just all of these rules. And it's like we just
Right.
stifle.
It really deadens your spirit. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
so
that
it's just
sounds like
great.
fun.
But
What
we
a
were
great way to start out the new year.
and that was kind of the point. It
Yeah.
just to, kind of kick out in a big way for 2018. And it was just, we were all hunkered down because it was snowing like crazy. You couldn't go outside.
Kind of fun though. I mean, when you're in that place and they have such good food and music and everything else. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I've taken a few workshops there and taught
it was
there a few
pretty
times.
magical. And like, you're kind of just, like you said, you're just kind of in this soup,
Yes. Yeah.
good food, self-care,
Oh,
yoga, really cool things.
massages. I know. It's lovely. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So how long have you been doing these podcasts? For quite a while, it looks like.
Yeah, I started this in 2011.
Oh, you
Uh,
were an early adopter.
yeah, well, and I tried before that. I actually tried because one of my favorite podcasters is Kelly Howe. She has Theater
Hmm.
of the Mind. And I started listening to that in 2005.
Yeah, I
And
love her too.
love her. And I didn't really think too much of it. I just thought she was really fancy, and I knew she had all this recording equipment, and
Yeah.
she's done all of her CDs. And right about 2009, I was like, I think I can do this. Like, I want to do this. I think this would be really great. And I feel like a lot of the topics and things that I talk about are things that people aren't talking about. Everybody has podcasts on business and how to make more money
Right.
and how to better
Yeah.
yourself. And, it's like, it's blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah to me.
Right. Yes.
I thought, I want to have podcasts that teach people holistic ways to have a better life and how to be a better person.
Great. I like that.
I started researching it in 2009, and I thought, oh my God, what the hell did I get into?
Yeah, it's a lot. Yes, exactly.
Well, and it was a lot back then.
Oh, I'll bet. Yes.
It was
Now we
so
do it
different.
with our cameras or our iPads or our computers. And
I had 7 different pieces of software that were like connected to make it work. And
Yeah.
it took me about a year to figure out all the software that I needed. And even with all the software that I had, when I would do a podcast, I would have feedback in my ear. So when I was talking,
Oh gosh.
in my ear.
Yeah.
So I
Oh,
just got used to that little fun party trick.
yeah.
And I finally launched in September of 2011. And if you listen to those first couple ones, they're rough. But
Oh,
I was like,
isn't that embarrassing? I know. I've listened to some of my early interviews and stammering over myself and repeating myself. It's mortifying. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
but I mean, it was great practice. And, now and it's funny because when I get interviewed by other people, I can see the mistakes that they're making, and I can see, and it's great because if they're open to it, I can give them tips, and I can say to them, and I can help them with software. And it just really helps me have a better understanding of just like how far I've come. I'm like, I really have.
Yay, good. That's great. Oh, terrific. And you have such an interesting niche here with what you do. So it's very different than what everybody else has. So I'm glad to be on your podcast.
Yeah, it's been it's really been such a gift because, on the surface you hear interior design and you think, oh, you just make stuff pretty. And it's like, there's this element where, people that work with us, we don't even get to the pretty until about 6 months down the road. It's like,
oh, interesting.
it's all about the environment. It's all about getting the feng shui correct. It's all about getting the energy right. And we really focus on that before we even start to get into the pretty part. And so if the client doesn't understand that, or if they're not open to that, we won't even work with them.
Yeah. Yeah. I go to Japan a lot, and boy, everybody seems to be very into the feng shui over there. I mean, it's sort of like kind of a given that you operate with that energy level and that interest. So it's really interesting.
And it's really heralded over there. It's the same way in China,
so.
and it's you're considered a doctor of the environment. And here it's a lot different. There's this whole education process, and a lot of people who meet me and they hear that I do feng shui, they think, oh, you just move furniture. And it's like,
oh, that's so awful.
I don't even touch furniture. I have nothing to do with clutter. I've had people think that it's just Asian decor.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm surprised in this day and age that you're still having to educate people as much about it.
A lot. And we even have a lot of the clients that we have are actually, they come from the podcast. And one of the reasons that they were prompted to hire us is that they listen to the podcast and they hear this, that I don't touch furniture, and they're curious, like, well, what is it that you're doing? And we've had clients on the show, and they'll talk about, like, you had me do this one thing and I've been trying to rectify this for a decade, and you have me do this one thing and it changes everything. And
isn't that
people are like, how is that possible? How is that even feng shui? So a lot of people don't even really know what feng shui is.
Right. Yeah. Your videos on your site about the before and after are very engaging, though. It's like, I'm sure that really helps create clients for yourself.
Well, and it's something that I've been interested in for pretty much since I started, and there had to be a reason why. Like, it couldn't just be on the surface, this idea of just a pretty space. It had to be, how is this changing your life? How is this making you better? And I've always been like a closeted spiritual person. I used to kind of hunker down in the 90s, but like, I've always been into psychics and mediums and astrology and numerology.
Yeah, now you get to come out of the closet here.
All this esoteric stuff and mysticism. And I have always been in this world. And I thought, if I could really do anything that I wanted to do, it would be to have this podcast where I could talk to, some of my best friends are mediums and intuitives, and, they do these really cool things. And I love being around them because I just feel like there's this higher collective consciousness with them.
Yes. Yeah.
You just don't get with other people.
How wonderful. Isn't it great to have an opportunity to do exactly what you want to be doing, that it really embraces all your interests? I think to me, that's what part of what intuition is like when you're excited about something, you're energized by it. That's your intuition going in that direction, saying that's the thing you're meant to do. I always tell people to pay attention to what they're saying to themselves. So often when people do, kinds of oddball things, perhaps that you and I do, people go, I can't make a living at that, or how could I make a living at that? And, both of us obviously said, we can, these are our interests, these are our skills, and let's embrace it. So I think so I'll honor you that you're doing that.
Yeah, I think that, it's just one of those things where I kind of had a make or break moment. Like, I was like, I can't work with people that just want to do interior design. It kills my soul.
Right. Yeah.
And now we're on an even bigger movement where, when I turned 40, I was just like, it has to be, we have to use this platform responsibly. We have a huge audience, and like, how can we utilize this platform in a way that is truly going to transform people's lives and make a difference? And so, my biggest movement right now is, it's so simple. Be kind to one another.
Yes, I know. There's not enough of that going around. Absolutely. Yeah.
People just are not kind. They have no empathy. They have no compassion for one another. It's all about them. Everybody's so selfish, and there's no gratitude.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
do something for someone and it's like they just take and take and take, and it's creating this
The
horrible.
energy vampires. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we have
But I
just
also
really,
find, we're not kind to ourselves either. I mean, I do a lot of course, my work is doing intuitive readings, and I just find that we're often so unkind to ourselves and beating ourselves up and competing with each other and comparing to ourselves to each other. And it's exhausting. So I think that be kind maybe works both ways, to each other and to ourselves.
oh yeah, we profess, I do self-care, if not monthly, every 6 weeks or so, we're writing an article or doing a podcast about self-care.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that, for me, when you're trusting your intuition, which is what I'm all about, is when you kind of ask that question, is what's the most loving thing for me to do for myself right now, is often a really great question to ask your intuition. And it's not like the answer always goes, hello, this is what you're meant to do, but it often will come back going, how can I not push myself and get overwhelmed? But what's the most loving thing that I can do? And I always just try to take action on whatever comes to mind. I feel if it's uplifting, it's energizing, you're curious about it, makes you feel better, that's your intuition telling you to go in that direction.
I
Yeah.
love that. Well, I want to back up a little bit. We just kind of like tumbled into
We
this and
always started out, yes, to
started
leap in
talking.
here.
Um, I would like to start off by asking you, you talk about how you really do follow your intuition, and how can we possibly, do something that we love and
Yes.
call it
Yeah.
work. But did you always know that this is what you were going to do? Did you always know that this was going to be your line of work? And if not, how did you get into this work?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. No, I mean, although I was like you, was always interested in it when I was a kid. I studied it. I loved taking meditation classes and would go to psychics and things like that. But, as I was sort of saying earlier, I think my self-talk was, how could you ever make a living at this? So I actually, for quite a few years, I was an operations manager of a software company in Boston, a totally different occupation. And I really, decided at some point that that wasn't what I wanted to do when I grew up, and decided that I wanted to go in a new direction. And I really couldn't figure out what I wanted to do other than very intangible, help people. And I wanted to do something with psychology and spirituality. And so I went to see a career counselor. And, and at around the same time, I'd taken a class in intuition development. And I went back to the career counselor the next week and I said, totally tongue in cheek, I'm going to be a psychic. I was really good at tuning into people in this intuition class. But I was joking and wanted to change the subject. And she said, why don't you take that seriously? I mean, it matches all the things that you really want to do. And so she taught me about visualizing and doing affirmations. And the weirdest thing happens. I mean, I think when you really engage with spirit and you really trust your intuition, miracles start to happen. And what happened for me, the short version of the story, was that a friend of mine died. I went to his funeral. I walked in and heard an inner voice, what I thought was an inner voice, going, sit there, sit there. And I sat next to this woman I didn't know. And it turned out that she was a writer for the Boston Globe newspaper. And I gave her a reading and she wrote an article, and I got 500 people, over 500 people as clients in the next month. So I really credit both intuition and visualizing and affirmations and trusting, that inner guidance to really follow my passion. And getting out of my own way in terms of the self-talk.
So I'm curious, you have a lot of really great books. From those, what are some tools that you teach people to tap into their inner knowing more easily?
Yeah, the two most recent books, one was Divine Intuition, and that's more of the kind of the spiritual, lots of exercises and techniques for helping one's trust their intuition. And so I like, as I said earlier, help asking people to ask their intuition questions. And I like asking open-ended questions. So not something that evokes more than a yes or no. It can come in the form of, what's my right next step? What should I do about, or what should I know about? I like keeping a pad of paper and a pen beside me when I'm asking those questions. I don't always get that answer right away, but what I find is that when I've asked the question, especially early in the morning, at some point later in the day, I'll get that aha moment, or I'll get maybe an inner voice or a feeling about something. Those are usually the ways that the answers come in.
Yeah, I definitely am intuitive, but
Mhm.
and I know we all are, but
Yes. Yeah,
I
agreed.
think the thing that, excuse my language, pisses me off is that
I feel like I know what you're going to say. No, go ahead.
I feel like for me, I have to really effort when it
Yeah.
comes to intuition. And by that, I mean that when I do really do all the right things, I can get some pretty profound intuition. However, like for instance, when I do a feng shui consultation, I will usually take 2 hours prior and 2 hours after to be in nature or to meditate,
Good idea. Yeah.
to really just get in that space. And I also have to be really careful about what it is that I eat. Like I'm a vegetarian, but I can't eat, certain foods like no dairy, no sugar, alcohol.
Yeah.
I do have to be going to yoga regularly. I do have to be meditating. I can't eat any crappy food. Like I have to really fine tune my instrument. And like I said, effort.
Yeah.
And the part that pisses me off is that I have a lot of very good friends that are intuitives, mediums, and like they can't shut it off.
Right.
They drink, they smoke, they don't exercise, they don't.
Life is not fair. Yes.
Right. So
I know.
what's the deal?
I know.
Why is that?
Well, there's a problem with when you can't shut it off too. But I know exactly what you're saying. I know when I do my readings, I often have to sit there and meditate and get clear and ask for guidance, and it's frustrating, But I think that all of us, we have different ways of getting the information. I mean, it might be that it comes through that still quiet inner voice. It's not. I wish it would turn up the volume sometimes. It also can come through the form of a physical sensation, like you're about to make a decision and it's just like you feel heavy or your stomach hurts or your shoulders hurt. You might get it as a dream. And so there's a lot of different ways that it comes through. And sometimes it's depending on the circumstances. But I think a lot of people will tell me they're not intuitive because they're not hearing that, Amanda, here's what you're supposed to be doing right now voice. I find for me, it often just comes in that aha moment. It's like, oh, that's a good idea. Not like, oh, I could have had a V8. That's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's definitely, it's more about paying attention to very soft subtleties.
Yes, it is for sure.
And like my girlfriend, Kim, and I've had her on the show, like she can't turn it off. Like it's, she has to be very protective of her energy she has stories of where people pop into her bedroom because she's a medium and like it's funny, but I know it's not. But
yeah, scare me half to death, I think.
Right. Yeah, I think I would too. But I think the other thing with my intuition is there's different ones. There's clairvoyance, clairaudient, clairsentient. Mine is claircognizant, where I just know shit and I don't know why.
Yep.
And for me, I think that's the hardest one to trust.
It is. I agree with you. Yeah.
Because I know something and I don't know why, but I think I'm making it up.
Right. So, that is such a good point, Amanda, because that's the thing that I hear so often when I teach a class on intuition is I believe what you said earlier is that I think we're all intuitive. And so often, in fact, there's a funny example. There was two things I can think of. I was teaching a class on how to develop your intuition, and I had a partner exercise. And one of the exercises was, a list of questions about your partner that was for the class. And the guy who was writing, he said, he's like, okay, well, what does she do about what's her occupation? And he wrote none, None. And when he was getting feedback from her, she said, how did you know? And he go, what? She was an NUN, a nun. And so, but he thought he was making it up, it didn't. And there was another one, same kind of exercise. And the woman said when she tried to figure out his occupation, she got, this is kind of weird, but a head being cut open and love being poured in. And so she was upset. She said, I just don't get this. I'm getting this weird image. It turned out that her partner was a neurologist who practiced spiritual healing. So, I mean, what better image than the head being cut open and love being poured in? And, I think whether you get it as those symbolic pictures or like you and I do, that claircognizance, that information is there. It's our inner compass. It's there to guide us.
Well, and I think it's really a matter of, I tend to overcomplicate things, which I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. Yes. And I tend to get in my head, and I'm finally getting to that place to where I just honor it. And, one of the things that I do, because as a feng shui practitioner, I read floor plans. And so a lot of people will say, oh my God, it's like you're a house psychic or something. And it's
Yeah.
not, it's just that there's ramifications that
Yeah.
I see again and again, and I know what that means. But like the other day I had a consultation, and, I went on my nature walk, and I went and meditated by the spring, and, I had some really cool experiences. But one of the things that I couldn't shake was that I felt like I was going to puke. I kept
Wow.
getting, like, I was very short of breath. I felt very anxious. I had lump in my throat. And I finally realized as I was sitting there, I was like, this isn't mine.
No, there's something going on. Yeah.
So rather than thinking that I was nervous about this consultation, which at this point I've done like, thousands,
Yeah.
when I got on the phone with this gal, I said, I'm feeling these things. I've got a lump in my throat. I feel like I'm going to throw up. I feel very anxious. I said, I'm short of breath. Are you feeling this way? And she said, oh my God, that's exactly
Wow.
how I'm feeling.
Wow.
So I've realized that because I take this time before each appointment to really tune in, I'm tuning in to how
Yeah.
I'm
And you're
feeling.
picking things up. Yeah. Yep.
And
Yeah.
having to trust that. And so, but again, I still get pissed off that I have friends that, like, it just comes so easily and they don't have to work
I
so
know.
hard.
No, it's funny because I have the same thing. I have a friend who just talks to her guides all the time, and we'd be having a conversation. In fact, it was funny when I first met her, we exchanged readings with each other. And that's how, in fact, she came from that Boston Globe newspaper article so many years ago. And so I was dating somebody at the time and wondering, is this somebody I should marry, and was having on that quandary. And she just sat down opposite me to give me a reading. And she said, she's looking over here, and when I'm over directly in front of her, she goes, I can't say that to her. And I said, what are you, what's going on? And she kept looking over to her left. And she said, I can't say that to her. And I can't say it to her. And finally I said, you have to say it to me. You can't keep me in suspense. And she goes, he's not the one. But she was getting it from her guides. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so jealous here. I do this for a living, but I don't get my information that way.
Yeah.
So.
And I think that's the hard thing, is that, especially if you're claircognizant, of trusting it. And the thing that I notice is that when I'm really busy and my life is very hectic, and like, I can't make it to a yoga class, and I haven't meditated in a couple of days, it flatlines.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
So that's the thing that can be frustrating.
Mm-hmm. But I like what you said too, because I think it's very important that often this information is very subtle. It comes through almost like a little dream, when you kind of like woken up and you really remember you've had a dream, but you get a little hit of it, and you can't necessarily get the whole full picture. So sometimes it's a bit frustrating. But I think when you start tuning into how do I get that information, and then when you're in the middle of a life decision or a life change, is really starting to check in with it. What does my intuition have to say? And it also comes through synchronicities and coincidences, and you might overhear a person saying something that really meant for you. You might get information in the form of a podcast, or get drawn to, our podcast, get drawn to a magazine article. So there can be a lot of different ways that the information comes in.
Yeah, it's really a matter of slowing down and paying attention. I actually have a great story where a couple of weeks ago, we got a very difficult client who lost her son to suicide, and she had attempted suicide. And I didn't know if I wanted to take on the client. I was actually going to send her to my Grand Master, because I thought, I just don't know if I'm prepared to handle this energy.
Mm.
And so I said, however, if I am prepared, and if I am the person to help her, send me a sign. And I said, let's call it an elephant.
Yeah.
So I'm meditating, and a book falls off my bookshelf and opens to a page. And I look down at it, and it says, what color is your elephant?
Oh my gosh. You
And I
can't
was
make
like,
this stuff up.
well, and here's the funny thing. I'm like, nope, nope, didn't see it. Nope. And so then I'm talking to my husband, not even 3 hours later, and he's like, it's a different elephant. And he just says it matter of factly, like, I can't do this. And, he's wanting me to do this, and it's a different elephant. I can't do that. And I'm like,
wow.
I've never said that before.
Wow.
But I still ignored it. Then that night the Grammys were on, and I'm watching the Grammys, and there's an infomercial. It's a 2-minute infomercial on saving the elephants.
Oh my gosh. That is really weird. And you know, those are the intuitive nudges that start to happen when you really start to pay attention to those little signs, and that they happen. I know I was at the beginning when we started talking that my husband and I are thinking about moving to Portland, Maine. And we were at a coffee shop months ago discussing it. And we have this like favorite number 222. It's like, I'm sure everybody has those, you know, numbers or signs or whatever, whether it's an elephant or it's numbers. And so we were talking about it, and I said, okay, well, if it's the right thing to do, we'll just have to see 222 on the way home. And no kidding, when we got out of the parking lot, there was a car parked right next to us that had 222 as the license plate. It had a big tire cover that said "Live the Dream," and then a little bumper sticker that said "Live with Joy." And then on the way home, we saw 3 cars with 222. I mean, you can't make it up, you know. Yeah. It's like, okay, I got it. So,
well, and I think that, you know, and I've talked about this before on the show, is that when something is meant to be, you'll often get like a whisper. And
yes.
Then if you're not paying attention, they speak up. And then if you're still not paying attention, they start to shout.
Yeah. Yeah. And it comes through, you know, I had a client a few years ago that I so clearly remember. She was in a job that she really hated. And she kept saying, oh, this job is just killing me. Well, I mean, to me, when you say something like that, it's, you know, that's kind of a no-no. You really need to pay attention to those kinds of things that you say to yourself. But again, if something's draining you, it's boring you, it's enervating you, that's your intuition saying, move in a new direction. But when you don't pay attention to it, as you just implied, you know, it kicks up the volume. So, you know, she got sick, and then, you know, she had some employment dispute, and it's like the universe was just saying, it's time to get out of here. And so she really, obviously she needed to pay attention to it, but she really didn't until it became a huge crisis. So I think your intuition gives you lots of warning signs.
Yeah, I definitely think it's there. And I'm curious, how has intuition guided you and helped you on your life path? How have you?
All the time. I mean, I just feel like it's sort of hard to separate out, you know, what's intuition and what's not. But I'm always just, you know, I mean, my favorite technique is to really, you know, to do those visualizations and affirmations that I learned so many years ago when I was working with a career counselor. And one of the practices that I do every day is after I do a visualization, and then I often will just close my eyes and I'll talk to myself as if I already have what I want. And so it can be very general. I mean, maybe, you know, that my move is going easily and effortlessly, that clients are continuing to pour in. I mean, it doesn't have to be so specific. And then the third part of what I do is I put my hand over my heart and I say, what 3 things could I do today to move in this new direction? And I try to pay attention to, again, what feels enlivening or lights me up or I'm energized by it. And those are the things I take action on, because I just firmly believe that intuition is our inner GPS or our inner compass, and that, you know, paying attention to it, I think our intuition is connected to our soul, and it wants us to be happy. It wants us to be prosperous, healthy, have, you know, love and community around us. So it's always guiding us to those things. And even when, you know, difficult things happen, it's always guiding us to that sense of calm and peace despite our outer circumstances. So I am really always trusting it and following it, and just grateful to have that guidance. I mean, I used to joke that, you know, wish we came with an instruction book, but honestly, I think that's what intuition is.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think that we are all intuitive. We may not have it as clearly or as strongly as other people do, but I do feel like we are connected to our higher selves, and our higher selves, you know, generally wants to help us on this life path and this purpose, what it is that we're here to do. I'm curious, what have you seen, you know, just in the span of your career, as far as, you know, working with and teaching your clients how to better understand their intuition? How has it changed their life? What are some amazing stories that you've seen with the people you've worked with?
Yeah. You know, I think there's a lot more interest in this, partly because everybody is so overwhelmed. I mean, you know, we were both talking about how, you know, when life gets overdone, we really need to make that self-care piece really so important. But, you know, I mean, I've had clients that have, you know, had intuitions about their, you know, their children or their children being sick, and doctors and saying, no, I really do know that there's something wrong with my son. And it turned out that there was a life-threatening illness. I've had clients that, have, in a way, sometimes intuition warns you away from something. I had one client recently that comes to mind, and he said he got a job offer, and it was like the ideal job, but every fiber in his being was just saying, this isn't the right job. Don't take it. Don't take it. And his logical brain was really arguing with taking it, of course. And so he finally just said, I'm going to trust my intuition. I don't understand what this is, but it turned out that the company went bankrupt. So it's like, and that's always the frustrating thing. I mean, if I were in charge of the universe and in charge of intuition, it would have said, hello, this company is going bankrupt. Please don't take the job. But, but often we're left with that little intangible, ephemeral, there's something off here and I'm going to have to trust it. So it is a bit frustrating, but I think we're having to trust our intuition a lot more because I don't know, don't you just think even like 10 or 20 years ago, there was like a protocol, like if you did these things, life would work for you. And now it's like all the rules are not there. They're not working anymore. And so you're really having to go inside and trust that inner sense of what's right for me, what's right for how can I be of service in the world, and really trust that inner voice to be a guiding presence, because certainly we're not finding in our government or our teachers or our bosses or things. It's really an inside job.
Well, and I think that now more than ever, we do need to be able to tap in, but it's harder than it's ever been.
There's too much noise. Oh my gosh.
Too much noise. There's too many distractions. We have too much going on. We're always on. Yep. We're always over-connected. Most people don't even get outside anymore because they don't have time.
I know.
And I think that, what you were talking about, this idea of it should be don't work at the company.
Yeah.
I think that, the biggest hang up there is, and I try to remind myself of this, is that we have free will.
Yeah.
We're here to learn something specific, and, we're going to come up to many crossroads. And the point of it is, how are you going to choose this time?
Right.
How are you going to choose? And so, some of us have clear, defined, don't do this, go here. And the rest of us, we have to really pay attention to those subtleties.
Yeah.
And it can be hard with all of the distractions.
Right. Oh, totally. And I think that, what you said earlier of just whatever your own way of kind of finding that inner peace, whether it's through meditation, whether it's being out in nature, whether it's taking a nice hot bath or having some ritual, having a nice, cup of tea, sitting quietly in your favorite chair. It doesn't even have to be, a half hour of contemplating your navel. It can just simply be a few moments. It could just be simply putting your hand over your heart or listening to some calming music for a few moments. Just having those rituals that you build into your life where you're really saying, I'm listening now. Because intuition is like any skill. It's like developing a muscle. The more you use it, the better you get at it, the stronger it gets. So I think all of the things that you've mentioned are really important. And, it's very individual. It's not like you just have to be a meditator or it won't work for you. There's a lot of ways to really quiet your mind and just say, you're basically creating a ritual to say to intuition, to your soul, I'm listening now. Please help me. Here are the things I'm struggling with. Somebody once said that prayer is when we talk to God, and intuition is one of the ways that God answers. And so whether you think of it as God or the universe or whoever else you're talking to, I just think that the spirit speaks to us that way.
Yeah, I definitely think that they guide us, and I do think that they are always there. And you made such a great point in that it looks and feels and is different for everyone. And so you may have to try different things to see what's going to work for you. For me, yoga and breath work and meditation and getting outside, especially getting outside, that has been the key to me really being able to tune in. And then fine-tuning my instrument as far as, diet, exercise, drinking lots of water. But, it took me years to put together this.
Figure the rituals that you needed to go through. Yeah.
And a lot of times, and I'm a huge advocate for meditation and breath work, not only for tapping into, divine source, but just calming the frick down, Everybody's living up here and not living down here. Right. And so, that's not for everybody, but I'm curious, once somebody does these things and still doesn't tap in, what do you say to somebody that says, nope, I'm not into this woo-woo stuff, never have been, I don't have it, I'm not intuitive?
Yeah. To me, it's not woo woo. We're talking about a lot of woo woo stuff here, but to me, intuition really is hardwired. And I work a lot with businesses. And the last book that I wrote is called Put Your Intuition to Work, which was a business book. And so I train a lot of people in businesses, and you'd be surprised at a lot of the CEOs of big companies and a lot of high-end successful entrepreneurs are all really kind of learning to tap into their intuition. And so, again, we all do it in different ways. I would say the very basic way to trust it is, does this decision that I'm about, does it light me up, or does it make me feel calm or peaceful, somewhere along that spectrum? And if it feels draining or I'm agitated about it, that's going to move you away in the other direction. So it's not even the woo woo, or, what does my gut say, or what's my guide saying, or, do I get a spirit guide message this morning that I'm going to write down? I mean, it can be that, certainly, and I don't mean to really make fun of it, but I think that there's a lot of practical ways that intuition speaks to us. The other thing that occurred to me as we were talking about how everything is so overwhelming, I find that for me, and having done this work doing intuitive readings for 30 years, when I get into that geared up, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, I've got to get on my social media, I've got to get on this podcast. When I get into that high overwhelmed state, is not the time that I manifest what I want. It's really, to me, it's when I've slowed down. I'm not in that hyper state of, Energizer bunny, but it's more that inner state of, what do I really want to create here? What's my intention? It might be X number of clients or X number of speaking engagements, and then to really visualize it, to ask for help, to kind of say, when you're programming your GPS in your car, you're saying, here's where I want to go. And again, those things can be intangible. It can be business success or peace or more romance in my life. It doesn't have to be so specific. And then just asking for guidance about it, saying, this is the direction I want to go in. And then you have to start taking action. Again, like at the GPS in the car, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't really start giving you directions until you start moving. And it's very similar. And I think a lot of people get scared of their intuition because it moves them out of their comfort zone.
Oh,
and they get very scared about it. Yeah. It's like, oh, how can I do that? And they start talking themselves out of it, or they don't know how they're going to be able to manifest what they want. I liken it to kind of standing at the bottom of Mount Everest, looking at the top where you want to get there. And it's like, oh my gosh, how do I get there? And it's such a stupid joke, but it begins with a single step. And then you get, follow the path. And so often intuition will give you the right next step, but it doesn't necessarily give you the whole path and the whole journey and exactly how you're going to get there. It rarely does that. So it is a process of faith, and it does, I think people get scared of it because it moves them out of their comfort zone. It requires that they learn a different skill or think about themselves differently, or to have confidence.
Well, I think that's such an important point, because that's the whole point, is that we are constantly growing and changing, right, and expanding, and you can't do that when you're comfy.
Yeah. No.
And we are so fearful of change. A lot of us are. We like our comfy situations, even if they're terrible. You're in a bad marriage, you're in a bad job, you're dealing with massive health effects, and this thing over here is probably the way you should go, but you're like, right, I don't see it.
No, I don't see that elephant that you were saying earlier.
But what I find so interesting is that it's, and I talk about this a lot on the show, is how it's essentially like you are standing in a spring and the water is just slamming into you, and all you got to do is turn around.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
And you're in the flow of things. And it's like, as soon as you step out of what your so-called comfort zone is, everything starts to show up. Right. That synchronicity starts to show up for you. The right people show up for you. Circumstances come out of nowhere. And it's like, why didn't I do this sooner?
Yeah, I know, exactly. But it does, it just feels scary because of the comfort zone. And the other part of that is that a lot of times people will tell me, I don't have the confidence to do that thing. And yet what I found, at least in my own life, is that the confidence comes when I do the thing I'm scared to do. I just remember when I wrote my first book, oh my gosh, I was so nervous about that. And I finally had to really switch my own self-talk of going, okay, you got the contract, start writing. Obviously somebody had faith in you. Just put your fingers to the keyboard and then it flowed. I started, it started feeling more exciting, and I started getting more sure of myself. And the same thing when I first did my first speech. Oh my gosh, I had muscle spasms in my back for 2 weeks prior to that. I was so nervous. but then I did it. And, now I get a little nervous before I get on stage, but I'm fine. And the confidence comes when you do the thing you're scared to do. Absolutely. I think, who wrote that book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway?
Yeah.
Susan Jeffers. That was one of my favorite titles and favorite books. Yes.
So I'm curious, over the years, I've had tons of intuitive readings, but I encourage the audience to send in some questions. And one of them that got sent in was, for someone who has never worked with an intuitive, explain to me what that looks like.
Oh, good. What a good general question. I like that. Well, people usually call me when they're in the midst of change and transition. They're trying to figure out next steps. It might be a job change or a relationship issue, or I don't know what, I just feel stuck and I can't get myself unstuck. And so I do it all over the phone, Zoom, Skype, all of those different ways. And what I do is I just use my intuition. So I get things in images and feelings and words and pictures, all the ways that we've been talking about. And it might be, sometimes it's just questions that I'm being guided to ask. Sometimes I really pick up a lot on where somebody's getting stuck or how they're viewing it. Sometimes what happens, I just get guided to say, here's what I'm seeing and here's an alternative for you. And it may be something that the client hadn't seen or hadn't considered. So the information comes in all sorts of different ways, but usually people report that the information is spot on, that they got a lot of new insights. It helped them get them unstuck and led them in a new direction. And I'm not a big believer that everything is fated and predestined. I know a lot of people who do psychic readings say, this is what I see in your future and it's this fixed thing and it's destiny. I just happen to think that we really have a lot of free will in terms of how things unfold for us via our beliefs, our expectations, actions we take. So I think that we really do control a lot of our future and our destiny. So a lot of times, pick up on many different things, but a lot of insight about what's going on with other people, relationships, what might be blocking you from creating what you want and really helping you get unstuck. So good first question.
Yeah. Second one, why is understanding our own intuition so important? Well, that seems kind of obvious, but
yeah, but I think that so many of us look to others to say, here's what you ought to do, or I know that when I first started my business, I kept looking to everybody else who might have done it before me, and went to all these marketing classes, and I thought I had to do it their way, or I wasn't going to be successful. And part of what intuition does is it makes you pay attention to what lights you up, so what your own individual gifts are, and your what you are here to do in the world. But it also gives you some clear direction about how to become successful. So the way I do it may be totally different than the way you do it, or somebody else who's in my own field might do it. So it's really, really looking at your own individual gifts. And I really probably can't say it any differently than it gives you guidance step by step about how to create a life that you really enjoy, that is really part of what you're here to do. It's part of your mission. And that's what we're hardwired with our intuition.
Well, I think too, what's so important about intuition, I feel like our cultural system that's in place is very patriarchal, and it's very push,
Yes.
be productive, do things, do 100 things, hustle.
Yeah.
And when you're so busy and so caught up in the froth of, keeping up, you can't possibly tune in.
No.
I think that's one of the most important.
And I think that is the challenge in this day and age, is that we are so overwhelmed and so busy that we aren't taking that time and not listening to that guidance, because we're not alone. Whether you think of it as a spirit guide, or whether you think of it as a soul connection, or a way to speak to God or Jesus or whoever, any other people that are kind of coming through as your guidance, I think it's fine. But we are guided. We are not alone, and we really do have that support. And the information does come in. Whether it comes in the form of the books falling off the shelves like you were talking about. Those signs and synchronicities are there all the time, and so. It's very comforting, at least to me, to know that I'm not alone, that I do have help on the other side.
Yeah, I agree with that. So last question that was sent in, is this, I think these are questions by people that maybe have not worked with an intuitive before. Is working with an intuitive a one and done, or is it more of a continual thing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, the way I work is I usually tell people to wait about 6 months to a year before they book another client, another session. There are some intuitives who you might see every month. I really prefer not to work that way because for me, I kind of get an overview of what's going on in someone's life and get the suggestions about what are the right next steps. And I just think that people need to rely on their own intuition and not just me and on mine, but also that they need to start taking some of the action steps, and then check in again in 6 months or a year. Listen, I had a few clients in the last year that I hadn't seen in 20 years, another one in 25 years. So it really depends on what works for you. And also, finding an intuitive is so individual. I mean, I've had readings that I probably wouldn't call that person again, and other people who I felt like really got me. So it is a little bit like getting married on the first date.
Yeah, I agree with that. So you're offering up a great ebook called 6 Ways to Supercharge Your Intuition. I'm excited to dive into this. I have not looked at it yet. But I would love to just ask, for those who are listening today to the show, through your books, you offer a lot of tips on ways that we can hone our own intuition and really trust that inner guidance and that gut feeling. What are one or two things that you have given us tips that you have found other people to say, man, this really helped me, or this is your top tip that you offer? Yeah,
I think the biggest one is when you're really overwhelmed and trying to figure out, like, you want to go in a new direction and you don't know where to begin. And because I get clients all the time, just feel like I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. Here's where I want to get to, but I'm here. And I would say just asking your intuition the question, what's my right next step? And it doesn't need to be a big thing. It can be sending an email. It could be reading a book. It could be taking a class. It could be doing some research. It could be just doing brainstorming something about, here's what I would like to do next. Because I think that's probably the biggest thing. And as I said earlier with that 3-step action technique, I put my hand over my heart and I do it at the beginning of each day. And I'm a little bit of an overachiever. So I say, what 3 things can I do today to move in this direction? And you pay attention to what enlivens you, excites you, interests you, what you're curious about. And that to me is about being intuitively guided. It's really the way I've developed my business over the last 30 years. I mean, there isn't exactly a blueprint for how to be an author, intuitive advisor, and speaker. So for me, it was always, what's my right next step? What do I need to do today? Who do I need to call? What do I need to read? And just really allowing that guidance to come in. So at the end of the 5 days,
I think that's a great tip in that, really honoring. I loved what you said about just really honoring about how it makes you feel.
Yes.
We are in the process of putting together a course specifically for interior designers to show them this new way of looking at environments and really approaching it with not just this idea of let's make shit pretty, but let's make this environment heal your client.
Yeah.
And we've been hitting a lot of roadblocks, and I just have not been feeling it, but I keep forcing it and I keep forcing it and I keep trying to, make it happen. And I finally just got to the point of, okay, for whatever reason, the timing is not right.
Timing is off. Yeah.
The timing is off. I need to just step back. I've put together the outline. I've just set it aside. But here's the thing that I've been running into is I feel like, because I can see it over there, I feel like, but now I'm just procrastinating. And I know that that's our cultural thing where we should be busy.
Right.
So, but I love the idea of honoring how you feel, trusting your gut, and just trusting the process.
Right.
Because I feel like by doing that, I've set it aside and just said, okay, it's not like it's not going to happen. It's just not right.
Yeah, because often intuition will say, yes, do this, no, don't, or you maybe get a maybe, or it doesn't feel like the right time. Absolutely. And I think that's really valid. And I've learned to say that that's not about procrastination. I just briefly, I worked as an adult education center for a long time, and I was in charge of all the major events, and there would be times where it's like, oh my gosh, I just don't feel like working on this. Why am I procrastinating? What's wrong with me? I'm lazy. I was like beating myself up. And as I got to be there, probably the end of the second year, I finally realized that those courses or those events that I was procrastinating on, they turned out getting canceled. That the presenter got sick, or we had low enrollment, or whatever. So somehow I was getting that intuitive message that there wasn't enough energy in this program, and just put it aside. So I've learned to really trust my intuition that sometimes it's just not the right time. So
Yeah, just honoring that. Like I said, I tend to get up in my head, and I know that a lot of my listeners do too, because a lot of them are, scientists and in the medical field, and
yeah,
very left brain, and so we do tend to label it as procrastination. I'm being lazy. I'm not doing the work. When in
right.
actuality, it's like that inner knowing of it's just not, like
Yeah,
that it's about to get canceled. There's not enough energy behind it.
right.
There's something that
Yeah,
is not jiving. Uh,
right.
so to honor that and to trust that and just
Hmm.
be like, that's okay.
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah. So I don't feel that you're procrastinating, Amanda. I think that this is really something that you're going to pick up later. There's my psychic reading for you today.
My type A personality appreciates.
I get it. I'm the same way.
Because I'm the same way, where I'm like very type A, and I'm like, okay, what 25
Yeah,
things am I going to
right.
get done today?
Yes. No, I know. I'm totally with you. I'm like that too. I've had to scale it back here.
I'm an
Yeah.
overachiever.
Yeah.
Well, Lynn, I want to thank you for coming on the show today. If people are interested in doing a reading with you, I know you're in the process of a move right now, but once everything settles down, if people are
Yeah.
interested in learning more about you or finding you or setting up a consultation, how do they find you?
I have a website, lynnrobinson.com, and my first name is spelled Lynn. And on the website, there's a lot of audio podcasts, there's videos, there's articles, there's quizzes, all about how to use your intuition. So, and an intuition newsletter that gives you information every week with lots of techniques. So lots of information there, as well as my readings.
I love that. I'm definitely going to dive into that. And I also want to mention again, Lynn is offering up a terrific free ebook, 6 Ways to Supercharge Your Intuition. So we will include that in our show notes
Great.
on our website, and also put that
Great.
on the YouTube video as well, so that people can access
Terrific.
that information.
Great. Great. Totally delightful meeting you. Yay. I'm glad we
Delighted
did
to meet
this.
you too. So many blessings. Thank you for saying yes. I so
Okay.
appreciate it. It was wonderful to talk with
Great.
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.